we're going to look at pivots and the neutral pose. I can rotate my object around the object center. If I click on center, there it is. I can also activate the pivot tool. If I hold down the Alt key, if I go to rotate and hold down the Alt, I can start to move my pivot around and use that as a temporary place. I can move it, I can lock it, and so forth. Now, if I were to open up the kinematics, here we go, we can see the rotation directly in here. We can use the pivot tab to move and offset that. So if I were to do the position in X at 1 and Y at 2, you can see there's my pivot moving here. I should do 1 and 1, something like that. So now when I rotate my object, I'll do it in Z, it might help, there we go, it's doing it around here. If I were to animate this and go to another frame, and let's say drop it down to, let's go to -1 here. So I've animated the pivot over time. If I were to also animate the rotation, watch what happens. Let's do just something like that, that's fine. I'll just do 90 degrees. You notice, in fact, the compensation has been there because it needs to understand from the original object's center, so therefore it has compensated by moving it. So if you're going to animate a pivot, you really need to animate the compensation at the same time. So I'm going to just reset this back to 0, 0. I'm going to set that to 0, 0 as well. If I go to frame 9 or frame 10 here, and now do it, there we go, it's rotating and pivoting at the same time. Now I am interpolating, so if you're going to animate, it's possibly to do it better do it with constant. So if I go to frame 1 here and go to now frame 9, and if I keyframe all of these values again, there we go, and I go to frame 10, and now if I move it to say up here, so we can pivot, and then you notice it's pivoted, ready for the next one. So pivot on that, and then the pivot moves. So it's very convenient to do it on both, to pivot the position in this case and the position compensation as well. I'm going to remove the animation. And just reset. We also have neutral pose. Now if we look at the rotation here, so we've got a little bit of rotation, I can also add another layer of rotation inside here. So the values still stay the same, but I have in fact offset the rotation by a small amount, in this case another 90 degrees. This is going to be very useful for things like IK. If I were to go and draw this, you'll see what I mean. So here would be my arm, say. If I select this, you'll notice it has 108 degrees of rotation in Z. If I open up the SRT local transforms, there it is. Now I could of course put that to 0, but it's actually offsetting it in 0 over here. So if I use the neutral pose, I want to take that value and put it inside here. So I can do use current pose, and therefore it adds that value into here, and now I've got a zeroed out value for my bone here. Same thing with this. So now for all of these I have a 0 value. So if you set up your character, you can use this to zero out all the values. You can access this from skeleton set neutral pose. If I open up the model, just say the biped rig, let's have a look at his arms and legs. Say these are at 0, but his arms have different values. So what you can do is open this up and select all the objects here, and inside the skeleton you can set the neutral pose. And now, there we go, everything has been reset to 0.